see you. I want to invite you to come and join me live for a special online educational meeting called Von Willebrand's Disease Conference. This is going to be an amazing opportunity to really talk about advancing von Willebrand's management. And I think that this is a really underserved population that has a bleeding disorder that really needs to be talked about so much more. There's so many needs, so many things that we need to elevate the conversation and talk about what solutions are available. We need to talk about how to get a diagnosis. We need to talk about treatment. We need to talk about what types of things that we're facing and struggling. And a lot of times, the patients that live these stories are the ones that are the most powerful agents of change. And so I'm super excited to have this conference opportunity. It's a free event. You can go and register right now on our website at hope-charities.org and learn a lot more details about the presentations and the speakers and the physicians that are going to be there. We're going to have a load of fun as well. We love doing giveaways. Generosity is my favorite. So we're going to do some gift cards and some fun raffles for you to participate in this free event. But it's going to be a fantastic time to learn more about this rare bleeding disorder. And today, I've been invited a good friend of mine, Nikki Angeles, to join me today to talk a little bit more about her journey with living with a bleeding disorder. And Nikki, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me for this pre-event podcast.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Well, as you well know, this is a subject matter that is near and dear to my heart. And I know you're truly an expert when it comes to living with the challenges. Unfortunately, living with bleeding disorder is kind of like you're the best at it, which means that you've probably had a lot of terrible things happen. So it's like a negative, but positive all at the same time. So I'm really excited for people to get to know you better, but tell us a little bit about where you're from, how you're affected by a bleeding disorder, and what you're excited about today.
Absolutely. So, obviously, my name is Nikki, guys. I'm 32 years old and I actually live in New York, but Long Island. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I have type 1 von Willebrand disease, and she also has von Willebrand disease type 1.
Wow. Well, you've had a long journey of living with von Willebrand's disease, which is, we've talked about this some before, but it's such an underserved part of the bleeding disorders population. And obviously, we're big advocates for women with bleeding disorders. We're big advocates for a lot of these rare and ultra rare diseases. And von Willebrand's is one that actually could be quite common, but a lot of people don't even know that it exists. And I think a lot of people are suffering with symptoms, but they don't even know that this is something that they have. And the diagnosis process has been hard, but I know for your journey, you really had a lot of ups and downs where you got diagnosed right away. And then, at a certain point, and then there was some confusion, and then they tried to backtrack. I mean, all kinds of things. So tell me a little bit about that, about what your life was like before diagnosis, and then also how you got a diagnosis and a little bit into your adulthood.
Oh, yeah. Great. My journey to the diagnosis is actually funny and interesting, because I could have found out a lot sooner. I had a lot of nosebleeds growing up. It was bad. There were bolts of blood everywhere a lot of the time. But my family associated it with more of like a humidity thing, and so it was kind of neglected. But once I started to get my menstrual cycle, things started to pick up a little bit. It was more so now the menstrual cycle plus the nose bleeding, that would keep me out of school. I actually missed a lot of school, between junior high and high school. And it wasn't until junior high where my mom and my family started questioning things like, what is going on here? Because I would miss school all the time. But still, nothing, happened significant to get me to that doctor appointment. But then once I get to high school, now things are picking up and it's just more repetitive. And obviously, we don't want you to miss too much of school, but it started to affect me now. Um, and it wasn't until Valentine's Day, when I was 16 years old, walking to work, and I bled in public in front of everyone. I had just got off the bus and I was walking to work, and it looked like I had a child in the street. And I was rushed to the hospital. And I said, Mom, I don't know what's going on, but I promise you I'm still, a good girl, but I don't know what's going on. And I was immediately tested, and the test came back positive right away. So for a little while, we were still confused as to what it meant, because the hospital that diagnosed me, they had just started to, I guess, like ration out their specialties and kind of move them forward. And so I was then transferred to NYU in the city, where they did have the hematologist and the proper care treatment. And I was treated there and continued treatment for a while. But then it was time to go to college. And once it was time to go to college, I kind of just, I guess I ignored the diagnosis or something just made me forget. But I did go away. I went really far away, and I went to like a school where there was nothing around for miles. And I have always been a track star runner, and when I went to college, they had cross country. So we would practice at 6 o'clock in the morning. And what would happen is I would have those nosebleeds. So the nosebleeds came back. And I lived in a dorm. And so what ended up happening was I would bleed after every single run. And so it wasn't a little bit or just like a 2 hour bleed, hold the tissue. I bled like a track to my dorm room and throughout the entire dorm apartment, and I actually cost the school money. So they sent me home. I was about 8 hours away from New York, and they said, "You got to get this figured out." So I went back to the hospital, and I was told, "Oh, it's where you are. You're up there in the mountains. It's the air." I said, "Okay." So I went back to school and told the school that, and they said, "Well, see, let's see what happens." And I continued and continued to cost them money. And when it was time for that break, I think it was like a December break, they said, "Hey, listen, we think you should go back there and stay there." And so I wasn't able to go back to that school, kind of like kicked me out in a weird way. And when I did go back, this time I demanded for someone to actually see what was going on. And at that time, I went to see my actual hematologist, who then shared an office with an ENT specialist. And she walked me over because on that particular day, I had 19 nosebleeds in one day. And that same day, he cauterized the nose. And then he said that night, "If you have another nosebleed, you're coming back and we're doing surgery." I said, "Okay." I didn't think anything of it. I went home, I went to eat spaghetti, and then blood just went all over my spaghetti. And he had given me his phone number, his private cell phone number at the time. And I texted him, and I was rushed to the hospital, rushed into surgery. And so he kind of fixed the issue at what he thought. Um, and for years, years and years, and to this very day, my 32 years of age, I still have like a surgery. It's like called an endoscopy something. He does something where he kills the blood vessel to stop the nosebleeds because no one has ever been able to stop my nosebleeds. So there were moments where I would have surgery every year or every 2 years to stop the nosebleeds. So once that was kind of out of my way and figured out, my menstrual cycle continued to be an issue. And it's been an issue till this very age of mine. At its worst, I stayed in the hospital for every month for a year and a half. I've had several forms of contraceptives, and I have tried about two out of the two or three types of treatments for von Willebrand disease. So it's been a journey.
Wow.
It's been a journey for
Bless
sure.
your heart. Well, you're such an inspiration that you just kept going and you
Yeah.
kept pursuing questions. And I think that that's one of the things that we really see a lot of people struggle with is that there's this sense of, I know we were talking about this earlier about how sometimes, it's kind of brushed off as being, well, you just have nosebleeds or you just have heavy menstrual cycles. But like, there, and then on top of that, you're having this, these bleeding episodes, so there's something like physically actually going on in your body where you lose, cognitive clarity, you lose, your sense of your low iron, iron deficiency, you have challenges that now you have low energy, you have a lack of ability to want to even climb and fight and explain, and you got to explain over and over and over again these challenges. And so how did you deal with that, and how was it that what was it that inspired you to just keep asking questions? Because I know you were thrown a lot of, like you said, contraceptives or those are the common things, right? Or even maybe a hysterectomy and things like that. You have really fought to say, no, this is a bleeding problem. What can you do to help me fix the problem? Don't give me all this other, side, business. Let's address the issue at hand. How did you keep so focused on that through the years?
At some point, what triggered my mind was that their plans were coming from books, and not so much the patients and the patient stories. And I felt like their treatment plans were more demanding. And at some point, when I got to a certain age, I no longer wanted to be told what to do. I wanted to know what was going on, why, and how can we fix this. And that kind of motivation came from my sister, who she has von Willebrand's disease as well. But it's interesting because she's hydrocephalus with epilepsy, and so her situation is a little bit more different. But because of her, when I was 7 when she was born, I always wanted to know why, and what's that foundation of why she's like this, and what's the treatment that she's going to have to prevent her from, her last day with me. And so for me, that was my motivation. How can I stop being in the hospital? How can I stop being embarrassed in public? And I felt like they were demanding and pushing things onto me that I didn't necessarily feel that was right, because I felt like if it was their family member or if it was them, they wouldn't necessarily agree with that plan. And then I started to educate myself more and realized that as a type 1 von Willebrand disease patient, it was more so of a structure, like a plan that they had, that they developed for von Willebrand disease patients, for type 1 specifically. And then I wanted to be the change, because not everything works for for every single person. Every patient may have a bleeding disorder, but they may bleed different. They may treat different, and what works for them works for them. And my motivation was that I wanted something to work for me. I wanted to be in school. I wanted to be present. I wanted to feel good about myself, because when I left school, which is something I don't really talk about much, I loved running. Running was my thing. I stopped running because of that constant bleeding and that constant need for surgery and that constant need for being safe and not wanting to be embarrassed in public. Those things and those episodes, they trigger you, and they can either make you really feel really small in a big world, or you can trample that and become your world. And so I wanted to be better. I wanted to step up. I wanted to know why. And the only motivation I had was me, because I was the one in the bed, in the hospital, in the ER, or on the floors, or wherever they put me. I was the one bleeding in front of people, in public, at work, my clothes, my car. It was me. And so their treatment plan was by the book, but my treatment plan was by my body. And that's what I wanted to work off of.
Mm, that is so, so good and so important. We talk about this a lot with individualized treatment plans, that there is this effort for, physicians as well as pharmacies and other places, for them to specialize in specific disease states and disease function. We've benefited from this greatly in the bleeding disorder space, but among a lot of rare diseases. But the problem a lot of times is that we still have to navigate this jungle of information that's been out there, that's really kind of not complete or not all the way there. And like you said, every medication operates differently in every one of our bodies. Like, my body's going to act differently than yours will, and so my neighbor's going to act different than both of us. So it's just every single element, it needs to be individualized, it needs to be customized. And if we, as the consumer, as the patient, as the individual, don't provide that feedback, or if we just have physicians that aren't listening and have a lack of empathy, that is really you're the one paying the price for that. And so if we don't speak up, there's a huge price to be paid, not just for the community abroad, but also for us individually. And we're the ones who have to live with the consequences of that. And I think we're constantly trying to preach to people, like, you got to speak up, even if you're tired, even if it's hard, even if there's crisis involved. And I look back at the journey that you've been through, and having failed 7 different types of birth control. Your story of, like, failing DDAVP, which is a very commonly, approach there. And then also, like, just being hospitalized every month for a year and a half. I mean, all of those things. You mentioned at one point about having a joint bleed, which is from the book. You want to talk about going by the book. That's not supposed to happen, right? But in your case, it did. And you are the reason why you've probably gotten better care, don't you think?
Yes, yes, 100%. If I didn't fight, and trust, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of moments where I felt like I can't fight anymore. And I know that patients probably go through that pretty much look for longer periods than I did, but I couldn't. I felt like I had this fight in me, like, please, like, almost like, please help me. And if you're helping me, then you're helping everyone else. But please help me. I'm looking at these physicians in their eyes and saying, it's either you or it's me. And it's the lack
Mm.
of treatment, the lack of, knowledge, the lack of resources. Someone or somewhere is dropping the ball. And if I help you help me, you might get the next von Willebrand patient tomorrow or a week from now, and you'll remember me and you'll say, I know what I did, and I'm going to try that way. And if it doesn't work, I'll continue to try, but it's the effort that makes the difference.
That's so good, Nikki. I want to touch on something about treatment, because this is a common thing that people are usually there's a really terrible policy in medicine that we call a fail first approach, where you have to fail certain medications until you get to the right approval. A lot of times it's a formulary issue with insurance reimbursements, but if the case is made clearly and articulately up front, meaning that you get to the right specialist and the specialist diagnoses you properly, then it really shouldn't be an issue to get you the correct medication, right? And so, unfortunately, within the von Willebrand space, one of the challenges that we encounter a lot is that it's sort of this fail first mentality. It's like, well, just start here. A lot of times your OBGYN is a lot of times on the front lines of detecting this problem early on. So they want you to try all these different things. One major problem, and I actually had all this is kind of maybe a story I haven't really told much, but I had a treatment center nurse tell me probably 15 years ago that, and she was a very prominent nurse, that mentioned, she said, Jonathan, she goes, we realized somewhere along the way that we had asked these women and girls far too often to just get a hysterectomy, and they were no longer able to have kids or children as a result. And really, all they needed was just a little bit of factor. They just needed a little bit of treatment. It wasn't even like this huge burden. They just needed something during that time, and it could have solved the problem, and they could have been fully productive, had children, had family. And that was something that was a near and dear, very, very big goal for you, right? Was you wanted to have a family. And I know that you were faced with a lot of professionals that recommended, well, just have a hysterectomy, right? And you rejected that. You said, nope, I'm going to stand up and I want you to fix the problem. I'm not just going to submit to the palliative solution you think is what's right for everyone. I want you to fix it for me, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, Jonathan, that journey, I'll tell you now, that journey is very emotional for me. And I'm not even going to be shocked if I have tears in my eyes, guys, but this is a real patient story now. So this is real emotion, it's real time. I was about 21 when I was faced with that. That I call it the ultimatum. And I was always that middleman between hematology and gynecology. That was interesting to watch them fight and argue. You fix this, no, you fix that, and to hear it firsthand, I'm like, that's how I knew something was wrong with this entire situation with the stigma with von Willebrand disease. Um, it's easy to throw the contraceptives at a woman, no problem, but then they don't talk about, or they don't think about or care about the aftermath of what it does to a woman. And if you don't like those feelings or you don't like what's going on, then you almost have to fight for that other part of the treatment to help your bleeding disorder. And I did face those issues as well. But what I call I stood 10 toes down, because if I tried 7 types of contraceptives, I have hemorrhage in front of you, I have passed out, I look anorexic, I had all these things. It's not working. So we're going to leave that out we're going to stop, and I'm going to be completely transparent. I did have an IUD. I did. I tried that. That was my last contraceptive, and to this day I refuse to even think about anything else still. I had this IUD in me, and I guess something not so much happened, or what they said was that I never had a child at the time. So what my body thought was foreign, that's how my body was responding. But that was the first time ever that I overdosed on Tylenol. And that is another epitome, because I kept asking for help. I kept asking and saying, I'm in pain, something's wrong, something's wrong. No one listened. And so I overdosed on Tylenol because I was trying to get the pain to stop. And eventually someone took it out and the pain was gone. And I said, oh, thank goodness. But I shouldn't have to and I didn't do that on purpose. I was just looking for help. But I shouldn't have to have gone through that to get someone to listen and help me. Um, but once we took that out and just focused on the treatment for von Willebrand disease, it worked. And don't get me wrong, there still are moments, and there have been moments where I'm almost like, hey, are you working? You're not working. I need some more. And I'll get more, and it's still, but then it calms down. But then once I say I'm not working with this von Willebrand, medication right now, it's still bleeding. They get back to that conversation with me. Hey, you should consider an IUD again, or maybe you should consider a hysterectomy. When something's not working right now, that does not mean we go back to what did not work. You know what I mean? And I think we
Right.
kept going through this cycle, and they have now stopped asking me because I keep fighting. But it's almost unfair to a woman, and not almost, it is unfair to a woman to demand she make a decision with her own body for in two different directions: the contraceptives and the hysterectomy. And so I needed to let them know that I was not going to let them predict my future or set my future, the tone for what I wanted. And it worked. Don't get me wrong; it was still a fight, but it worked because I stayed on the path of what I knew I wanted to do.
That's so good. Good for you. And you also were able to get pregnant and had a
Yes,
baby, and now you're
yes,
growing your family,
yes,
right?
yes. And so we're back at that conversation now, but it's not as intense as it used to be, which is nice. And I have it in the back of my mind. I know what will help, but I also know that I don't have to do that because they think that's the easy way out or my easy way out. I'm going to continue to do what I think is best for myself. And I'm happy that I'm not on contraceptives, and then that's not to promote to not do it, but it is
Sure.
that I know for myself what worked and what didn't work. And I'm proud to say that if I have a bleed now, I infuse and I feel safer than I did, having the contraceptives and infusing. And if you want to get scientifically technical, if you're taking a contraceptive and infusing, you have a higher chance of a blood clot. And that's something we don't want to do because then you got to get on blood thinners. And that's something you don't want to do. And again, this all comes with knowledge, right?
That's so
So
good. And
we have to do that.
empowered to have that voice, because
Yeah.
I find so many times people just kind of go along and can go sometimes a decade or more really just trying to check the boxes that the doctor wants to check without saying no. But I'm going to do my own research. I do this a lot as a layperson. I wasn't trained to be a physician. I don't know. So you're fortunate because you had some training, right? You're a
Yeah.
nurse, and so you were
Yeah.
trained in the medical field. But I didn't come from that place. And as a person living with bleeding disorder myself, I found that I just had to sort of bury myself in these things that I didn't understand. I had to read studies. I had to read the information that was out there, and I couldn't even spell these words half the time, much less pronounce them or repeat them, but I just found if I just buried myself in them, I would start to pick up little things that I could like relate to my personal experience. And I think so often, in the medical community, and this is no knock on doctors or researchers or anything. I'm so grateful for every one of them who commit their lives to this. None of us would be here if it wasn't for the research that's been done by medical professionals. And so we're grateful for that. But one of the things I have found is that so oftentimes they look at people who are patients as subjects to be studied, but oftentimes not co-laborers in a solution. And what you have done is proven that you can keep pushing for what is right for you. There is no other, I tell people this all the time. There is no other person who is a greater expert on you than you. And you can't discount that. But today, white coat syndrome, it's a thing. Like, I mean, my blood pressure goes up if I just pull in the parking lot sometimes at the treatment, but it's not because the doctors are rude or mean or rejecting me, but sometimes I just feel that, right? And that feeling is real, and it can influence how much I'm willing to speak up. And I tell people all the time, you said such a great point. There's a fine line between becoming an advocate and an activist. And I think sometimes when you're not getting the solutions you need, it's easy to become almost adversarial as an activist. And sometimes you need that because you got to just push through. But I would say most of the time, what I love about your journey is that you said, you know what? I'm just going to say, can you help me? This is what I know, but please help me. Like I'm trying to do all the things you're telling me to do, but I still need help and it's not working. And I feel like there is something that we're missing here. Can we keep going? And you brought up a point that I thought was really powerful about how once you've got a diagnosis, it doesn't matter if you go to another doctor. It's so hard to get that diagnosis identified that it really cannot be reversed. Is that what you were told? Is that right?
Oh yeah, 100. I mean, it's unfortunate because I lived in New York City, and then I went to just a different county. I only moved about an hour and a half away, and the first of all, the knowledge between the two hospitals that I'm comparing is crazy because when I first moved here and the first hospital visit that I had out here because of a bleeding situation, the and I'll never forget it. The physician said, "Hey, I don't know anything about von Willebrand disease, but I do know I'm going to admit you, and we'll see what goes from there." I never had encountered anything like that before. And I was still fairly new to the disease. So I'm like, okay, let's see what he's going to do. And they kind of just kept me there and waited for the bleed to stop. I think I got some stuff, I can't recall now, but it was interesting to see the dynamics between the two counties and how much knowledge one had compared to the other. But it made me better at the end of the day because it's still a hospital that I still go to in the event of a situation that I don't want
Mhm.
to, but I do go. Now they're more knowledgeable, believe it or not, because I ended up working there at some point.
Wow.
So while I was there, I have that emergency von Willebrand handbook for
Mhm.
emergencies.
Mhm.
I actually gave it to them, and that is what they go off of now. So
Wow.
it's crazy how that path happened, but
Yeah.
it did, and I'm very grateful for it. And they're very grateful for it. But during that time, I was going for every month for a year and a half. It was I didn't have the book yet, but it was interesting because I would go in and they would just send me upstairs. I had the same room, same door, same everything. And you don't want that. That just says a lot right there. But it was something like it was a norm to me. And it felt really uncomfortable. But I think what we don't talk about a lot, Jonathan, is about the mental health that the impact that this does. And at a lot of different levels. For on a woman's perspective, the menstrual cycle, bleeding, the hysterectomy, and contraceptive talk. And then we
Mhm.
don't talk about much of how much it affects us when we don't have that proper communication channel with our physicians or with our loved ones, and when we feel so little. And I have been there, and I'm very honest about what I've gone through, because I think that journey makes you who you are, and it makes me who I am. It has made me who I am today. But I've been low, and I've felt low, and then I've always told myself, and I tell other patients that I know, they're not you. You're sitting on that bed. You're going home and having to deal with that. So don't stop fighting. Keep fighting. And it's driven me because bleeding in public, bleeding on yourself and on your clothes, and having to travel with a lot of clothes on hand, that's uncomfortable. And so now I'm doing a lot better, which I am so happy about. But there are patients out there that are not, and I know that their mental health is not the greatest. And I get it. And sometimes I'm still low. Sometimes if I'm swollen in my joints, or if I'm having a nosebleed, or whatever is going on, I feel depressed. I feel like, oh, I have to go through this again. I have to access the port. I have to infuse. And this is a constant story throughout the community. But it's almost as if that we take that stigma of not being heard and we keep it within ourselves. And some patients just keep it, and they hide and they don't speak up. But then you have someone like me who's like, hey, come here, let me help you. I have your back. I'm listening to you, and I'm going to help you. And I wish that we can make this such a bigger conversation, and I'm striving to help that. But mental health matters all across the bleeding
So
disorder world.
good.
And we are all going through it, and I know von Willebrand disease is such a tough diagnosis. I know it. I'm going through it every day. I know it, but I want patients to know they're not alone. And if you need that help, please reach out, because we're here. We all are going through it, but we are here.
That's so good, Nikki. Well, you're such a powerful advocate, not only for yourself, but also for the community. And I know one of the things that we really encourage people to do, and part of that self advancement mode, is to get educated as much as you can, to read as much as you can, to read studies, to go to PubMed, look at all your stuff, ask the correct questions in the clinic visits, but also coming to these online meetings. I mean, we're getting ready for this Von Willebrand's conference that I'm super excited about, which is available online. You can join from anywhere, but it's going to be on July 24th, right around the corner. And I'm really excited about this because we're going to be talking about some of these issues that's really important, such as, what to look for when you're suffering with maybe low iron deficiency as a result of a metric that you can follow for this, or understanding how to do preventative treatment. I mean, even that one thing is maybe understood to us because we've been on this journey for a long time, but a lot of people don't, even if they ask their physicians, have a difficult time getting to prevention. And prevention is so key, but having the right information to bring to your doctor is a big piece to that. And so we hope to make some change in that area to give people this opportunity to learn. But I know this has been a big deal for you. You've been to our online conferences, obviously our in-person Hope conference as well. And what would you say to anybody who might be watching this is kind of wondering, like, man, this might be what I've been struggling with, and I don't know who to ask or what to find. Like, what would you say to encourage somebody to participate in online education?
Oh, guys, I have so much to say. Okay, I try to put myself out there, like, and I really try to get involved in a lot of the conferences. And I'll tell you, and I told Jonathan this before. There have been events and there have been conferences that I've gone to where von Willebrand is probably at the lowest of that totem pole, or it's talked about a little bit, like it's almost as if they don't want us to think that they forgot about von Willebrand disease. So I want to say that this is such a huge step for Hope Charities. And I'm not just saying this. I'm saying this because it's a huge step forward. It's a huge step forward towards resources and to the community. It shows that they are listening. It shows that they are here for us, and they're not just focused on one part of the community. They have realized that we are all one. And I'm so excited for Hope Charities to take this step because it's expanding their family. And I'm so happy to be a part of it. And I'm more than willing to take this journey. And all I can say is take advantage of this, because a resource will take you a very long way. And I will tell you, just as a side note, I have a 3-year-old daughter. I had questions about a von Willebrand test that she had, and because of the resources available, I was actually able to speak to one of the top von Willebrand experts personally, and he helped me. And it was because of that
Wow.
resource that was available, because of the community, that I was able to get my daughter the proper treatment care plan for an emergency. Otherwise, they would have not given me anything. So
Wow.
take this opportunity and please keep it right at your hip. Keep it in the front, back, sides of your mind. Keep this as a favorite on your bar tab on your internet, because it's so important. This is such a huge step forward. And I really hope that we can go further, expand, make more projects out of this. I'm really, really happy for Hope Charities.
Well, I'm excited too, and this has been a long time coming. We've been working on this for a long, long time. We've known it's a need, and such an underserved population in general. But I'm just thrilled, like you, to be able to expand our reach. A lot of people don't know this, but originally, when we first started 15 years ago, the name of our organization was Hope for Hemophilia, and about 5 or 6, 7 years into the journey of trying to serve the people with hemophilia, we realized there was so many other rare bleeding disorders we kind of unintentionally, we didn't mean to, but it was just kind of an unintentional thing we just didn't include. And we felt like it was so important that we actually changed the name of the organization, everything, to Hope Charities, just so that we could include, and really facilitate resources for people with von Willebrand's disease. And there's a lot of other diseases out there as well. We cover about 11 different disease states. A lot of people don't know that, but actually, this is probably our one of our top priorities, is to try to cultivate more and more resources. I know you get this, but a lot of people have seen the Hope Factor magazine. Our last issue that we just sent out was all about von Willebrand's disease, and it's not because it was something that was sponsored or paid for or what have you. We're grateful for our partners in that way. But at the same time, this has been something we've been working on to try to release. And I know we have our Hope Conference coming up in person in Orlando, Florida this year. Super excited about that, November 7th through 9th, shameless plug. But that event, we're actually going to be doing several big moments specifically for people with von Willebrand's disease that we just haven't been able to do before because of, just the journey of growth for us. So you hit the nail on the head when you said that we're trying really our best to put our best foot forward to really serve every person that's affected with a bleeding disorder. And I've always found that networking and communicating, connecting with others is something that is our human resources are probably our most important resources. And it's not always about the knowledge you can read in a book. It's about sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's the old saying. That's so important. And that's why I'm so grateful for you today coming on and being a part of this conversation, but also being a part of our online sessions. And I know you're going to be there along with a lot of other friends. And so, Nikki, thank you so much for just being such a really champion for our community and for your own health, for your daughter's health, and for so many other people, being a real resource. I know people can reach out to you online all the time, but if you want to, please email us and we'll be happy to get you connected to Nikki. But thanks for joining me today to have this conversation, and a
Thank
lot
you.
more to come, right?
Yes, of course. I'm here, guys.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being with me today, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Bye.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this time. A big thanks to Nikki specifically for talking to us about her journey. This has been such a wonderful conversation with her, and I'm looking forward to a lot more. I know she's going to be joining us, but so many other people on July 24th for Advancing von Willebrand's Disease Management. And it's something, just as Nikki said, couldn't have said it better myself, is that this is something we've been working on a long time to try to advance this conversation. We're going to be talking about how to monitor iron deficiency in the context of a metric for therapeutic success. Dr. Amber Federizo is going to do a fantastic job of going through that. If you've never heard her speak, you need to come and listen to her speak about that because it's very powerful. We're going to be talking about self-infusion. That's a big deal, and how to really have independence with choosing a therapy that works for you. We're going to talk about preventing bleeding episodes with prevention. That's something that I'm really excited about because preventative care has not been something that has been really common so much to this particular disease state, but we hope to change that and really improve access for all. And so really, excited to expand on a lot of those things and to talk about self-advocacy, resources, understand where to go for help. So please join us. You can register on our website, hope-charities.org. You can learn a lot more. You can click in the link below, and we would love to see you there. We're going to have a ton of fun together, too, because we're a community. We love to have fun, and generosity is my favorite. So we're going to be doing a lot of gift cards and giveaways and having a blast together. You'll get to see other people from all over the country who are challenging medicine as we know it today to try to improve their own future. And so if you have any questions about this, or if you can't join us, you'd like to know more, you can always email us right here at events@hope-charities.org. We would love to answer any question that you may have about your bleeding disorder, or maybe you're suspicious of and don't know where to go. We'd be happy to lead you to the right places to look for that. But again, my name is Jonathan James with Hope Charities, and I'm really thankful that you took the time to be with me on this pre-event podcast today. And a big thanks for Nikki Angeles for joining me today for this conversation. We also want to say a big thank you to our sponsor for this event, Octapharma, for helping to support all of the outreach and educational opportunities that we put forth at Hope Charities to be an even bigger advocate for people just like you.